Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
J. Smith Cameron is an actor. She sat down with me in Lower Manhattan to talk about the work. Just a quick note. Two pieces we talk about in particular in this episode are the film Nancy by Christina Choe, which is opening Friday, June 8th in Los Angeles and New York City, and the play Peace for Mary Frances, co-starring Lois Smith, which is currently running in New York City. Also, we talk about the film Margaret, which was written and directed by Jay's husband, Kenneth Lonergan.
When you have the script, the auditioning is over, or petitioning for the role is over. What's the first thing you do in preparation?
What I like to do with something like either Peace for Mary Frances or Nancy, something where I have a big role, is, it sounds very simple, but I like to read the piece over a few times without coming to too many conclusions about it straight away. Sometimes when you're auditioning, you're forced to, there's a time constraint and you have to kind of make some choices and design how you're going to attack the thing to go after it. Or if you do a reading of a play for someone, you have to kind of jump in. So once you're cast, it's kind of nice to sort of take any pressure off choices and just read it. And this is kind of odd, but all in one sitting if possible, because that's how people are going to watch it. And you want to sort of get the whole thing, and that's easier said than done nowadays. Like usually we're forced to read a script. We act-ons, as I call it, a little bit on the subway and a little bit before you fall asleep at night and here and there. And once you've got the part, you have the luxury of kind of like, wait, I'm just going to sit down and enjoy this like a piece of reading, like a piece of literature, and try to see the whole piece and get the context of the tone of the whole piece and what the arc of the whole story is and what my character's arc is. And just with an uncluttered, unfettered, enjoyable read of it, and a couple of times if you have the time to do that.
Tell me about that with like Nancy. Like when you get this script, you've never read anything that this person wrote before,
right?
And you somehow get this script, and it's a big role, and it's kind of heavy.
Yeah.
What did you do for that to start the process of inhabiting this character, which you did to a point where I'm mesmerized by it?
Like I say, I think it's always a little different. In that case, I was sent the script and a letter from Christina, and she had seen me in a movie called Margaret that my husband directed, and just offered it to me, sort of based on that. And so the first thing we did was meet and have lunch and talk about it. She was fascinated about people pretending to be other people in order to make a connection. And to me, that's what's so striking about that story, is that Andrea's character very strikingly has, impersonating people or pretending to be something she's not, but not to any ill means. She's just desperate, I think, to make a connection, an emotional connection with someone. But my character too, Ellen, is very lonely and has this hole in her life and is just a sitting duck for that. She's just completely ready to make a connection too. So that interested me. And then, I'm a mother in real life. It was very relatable to me to think, it's any parent's worst nightmare is that they lose their child for some reason. Child gets kidnapped or taken away or dies young or disappears. And how Steve Buscemi and I, as these parents who've lost a child, have sort of taken different roads of coping. And because also when something's unresolved mystery like that, you can't stop obsessing about it because there's no answer. If our daughter had died and been found, I would have be in a different emotional place than the character is at the beginning. Right. There's still my character, as opposed to Steve's, is still kind of holding out hope against hope, and has a longing that she'll reconnect with her daughter. Other than that, I thought the piece was very naturally written. The dialogue was very naturally written. It was kind of easy. It wasn't far afield of who I am. It was not an outrageous characterization to create or form. I had a simpatico straight away with Steve. Felt natural. She also let us improv sometimes, and that's always a great icebreaker for letting things settle into something that's very real and immediate. And then Andrea is so artful and imaginative, an actor, that was all kind of, I hate to say it, but it just sort of fell into place. It wasn't a hard thing to it wasn't really hard to come up with. We went to painful places sometimes on some shots, but you don't think about them all day long, you know. And it wasn't, I have to say, it wasn't something I had to work up to. It kind of was constructed in such a way that it unfolded naturally.
Can you describe the kind of director that works best for you? And what's the approach that gets the best out of you?
Well, one thing that's difficult about working on films or television, for me, because my background is really, I started out doing far more theater than other things. In the theater, you get to rehearse, and it can kind of unfold what that characterization is. And you don't really, I mean, some films take some time to rehearse, but really it's not that way. It's not financed that way, it's not structured that way. Comparatively, you know, even if you have some rehearsal, it's not the same thing. And with a play, you rehearse the whole thing in order and you perform the whole thing in order, so that if you have an emotional journey, it follows, it unfolds organically. In a film, that's, I think, the trickiest bit. And I guess, I don't know if this is a very exciting answer, but I like when directors kind of do whatever it is in that moment to sort of set you free. Sometimes, especially when someone's also written it, which is often the case, it's very tempting to direct a lot, and I can't blame them for that, want to tell you a lot of things. But I think it usually, you get the most out of it if you just kind of let them have some takes before you jump in there and tell them a bunch of stuff. And maybe if it feels stiff, you let them improv what might happen up into the moment of this, where the dialogue starts, and just sort of not fighting what the actor is, or, you know, personally bringing in there within their own organism, maybe not the way you envisioned it when you wrote it, totally. So it's sometimes, I think, hard for, and this is true for playwrights, you know, as well, to kind of go, okay, I never meant her to be like that. But on the other hand, this actor or this actress brings this quality. In the end, it adds up to the same punch, you know, emotional value in the scene. So let me let this or that person do some takes that are their way, and then I might suggest this or that. And then, you know, and I guess just letting you feel free. And, you know, if there's a lot of staging that's necessary, there were scenes where we're, you know, making breakfast, say, in Nancy. And then if I'm beating pancake batter, then the sound department has a problem because some of the dialogue is, you know, but my character is really finding something in, really immersing myself in this task. I'm avoiding my husband's judgment about how I'm treating this new person in her life. I kind of really needed that action.
Right.
So, you know, that was a little problem to solve, and I can't remember how we solved it. I think we probably ended up having to do a little ADR to rescue that scene. But, you know, things like that come up where, you know, like, oh, I'd always imagined her just wiping the counter, but I need, you know, maybe it turns out I needed something really that occupied me so I could avoid his eye contact altogether, because I know I'm picking up on a very micro level that he doesn't think we should be getting so close so fast to Nancy character. And, you know, so if I'm really immersed in something, whatever it is, I should have picked something less noisy, but, you know, that then it's easier to evade his advice.
That's so interesting, that example, because that's an example of, like, an actor has a need and other departments have to adjust.
Yeah, but sometimes the actor has to adjust too. There's just no way around it. There's
Right.
not the time or the budget. I guess often you have problems you have to solve on the set, and so ironically, even though you know, you have close-ups and you can be incredibly quiet in a movie, and you can't really in the theater. You have to project and you have to turn, the audience has to see your face most of the time, and or as much as they can, and you might think for an actor that it feels more artificial to be on stage. But in a way, it's less so, because you're really doing the task live. If you're making lemonade, you have to make the lemonade right there, and you can't kind of fake that, and it's very in vogue in film and television right now to be super, super quiet. I've been on sets where I'm sitting as close as I am to you, and the other actor's speaking so quietly, I'm almost lip reading to hear my cue, because
Really?
It's almost, I don't think when it's edited and mixed, it doesn't come off like that, but there's a sort of a little bit of a vogue of just being really quiet and tense and really dropping in and and it's, I think, something that might in the future even seem dated or like an affectation, but right now I think it's an exploration of something that sees intimate and intense, but sort of artificial, because there you are, you're not very far away from them. You can barely make out what they're saying, and it's just a style of filming that's happening right now, or film acting, I should say.
Right.
And I like it as much as anyone when I see it put together.
Yeah.
But it's just so funny, because it's supposed to be ultra real, but it's like, hey, speak up, we're outside, there's traffic going by, you'd have to speak louder in real life. If you were really going to be real, you'd be using your outdoor voice, you know what I mean? Like, so there's little things that are kind of as fakey as anything that you have to overcome in film that I think if you weren't an actor, and if you were a would-be actor and you were thinking, I want to make movies because it's so real, you're just quietly in a room, it's like, well, there's just, you have to hit your mark, or you have to be really consistent about when you set down the glass every time, or else they can't cut it together, and there's all this stuff that's quite, technical and clunky that isn't really particularly true in the theater. Like, you can be much more offhand in a way, you can be more moment to moment and within the, certain constrictions, but and it's really interesting, double standard there.
Yeah, you have like a play running now, you have the movie coming out, you have a TV show you're in coming out, and you do a lot of theater. Are you somebody that needs or misses rehearsal on those other things?
Yes. Except the other thing is, I had this job on this series called Rectify, where I was one of the leads. It wasn't a huge cast. It was a quiet, small, intense family drama. And, the other thing is that usually, compared to a theater scene, often, film or television scenes are shorter. So you spend all day, you start with a master, and you kind of gradually, you have rehearsed, by the time they get to your coverage, or your close-up or this or that, it quite well, and and you only have to kind of beam in on that unit of material at a time. And so it's often in another roundabout way.
It's kind of a baked-in rehearsal.
Yes. It's often very, very, very investigated by the end. And then you might have 2 scenes the next day, and you can just kind of go delete, and you don't worry about today's work. You go home and you look at what you're going to say tomorrow. And you get up, and when you're in the makeup chair, you look at it again, and then you get on set, and they decide where you're going to walk so they can set up the lights, and you go away while they set up the lights, and you maybe run lines with your fellow actor, and then you slowly, and then they do a master. They generally start with a master, and you slowly warm up to something, and you learn what the scene is as you go along. And especially the writing and directing in that was so careful and good, and it was this close, small cast, intense material. We got to know each other so well. That was, not like the 3 or 4 weeks of rehearsal you get with a play, but did feel very prepared.
What's a normal day like for you when you're doing a play?
Well, we only just opened, so I've yet to find out what a normal day on this play is going to be like. But that particular play was very arduous to rehearse. First of all, adore the cast, extremely clever writer and clever director, and very cutting edge designers. So it's you saw it. It's a big beast of a play. It's this, and very emotional, and kind of rough. So it was hard to just simply learn it. Like, I felt like we used all our rehearsal time just figuring out the nature of it. It also is after that sort of like naturalism, like not everything that we say or do moves the plot ahead. It's all like about the banal things as well as the highly dramatic things that happen when that's a play about someone in hospice and family, all the family dynamic around this person, and the humor and tragedy that go along with that, and also just the quotidian day-to-day, boring tasks that go along. And so the play somehow tries to capture that sort of like specificity. I also I'm constantly like running up and down the stairs. I fold laundry, I make a bed, I wash dishes. I'm like, it's like the day-to-day house. I'm like really busy.
I didn't think about that.
It was very fierce to learn. Like it was just lots of dialogue, and because it was a new play, they were tweaking it and putting lines in and out, or slightly rewriting lines, or make big cuts or little cuts and finessing it. But now that we're open, there feels a huge relief because there's so many bits and pieces to this play that we're aching for sort of a routine to be able to really, for the dust to settle so we can really actually play it, because it was really hard to rehearse, like very, very hard to get. And then even when we moved into the theater, there were so many light cues and so many technical things, sound cues, baby crying and cell phones going off and locks.
The TV stuff.
TV, exactly, TV. I mean, it's chock full of tech. So now that we have some privacy with it, we're just us. It's just us and our fellow actors and the audience. And I'm sort of really looking forward to the run now, because I think that we can all get some peace from. And even though the play is an ordeal, it's a whole epic journey, like what we go on. We need R&R and rest in order to counteract the highs and lows of that story. We need it desperately.
What do you do right before you go on? Like, is there a thing you do? Is there a relaxation thing? Or
yes, it's dumb. I do that. I don't do it every play, every entrance, but whenever I've had a big monster part like this, just to calm down and center myself, I will be right there in the wings. And you breathe in for a count of 4. You hold that breath for a count of 7, and then you release. You completely empty out on a count of 8, and you do that 4 times in a row, and it kind of gets your heartbeat to settle down, and you're counting, so your mind's not spinning out of control. You're kind of it's sort of a little tiny quick minute meditation in a way, because you have the task, a simple one, but a simple task of like, my lungs are full, I'm going to hold this, 6, 7, and then and you were trying to get the whole breath out on a count of 8. And it's, for me, enormously helpful. Keeps me from getting too nervous. It gives me tasks. Your brain needs oxygen to remember lines and in that play, it's so, not repetitive exactly, but there's a lot of, it's sort of about how there's every day I go and give a dose of medicine, I get all day long in the play. Over and over, I give doses of medicine. They're all slightly different. Yeah. It's very easy to be like, early on when we were rehearsing, be like, which one is this? Is this the 8 o'clock dose, or is this when I come in with coffee too? I'm like, because it's sort of like Groundhog Day. Like you're kind of, and it's one of the ideas in the play is how repetitive and and they're not. It's not quite repetitive as we realized. They're more like laps we're making, and it escalates to the final conclusion of the story. But it was really hilarious backstage, because all of us would be like, what's next? Food, give all of them things. Like, wait, where are we? Wait, oh, over there. Wait, do I have a coffee cup? No, go. Okay, is it a cue light? Okay, right. Oh, right, I know which one. And it's only just settled. Oh God. And it's that kind of play. Not all plays are like that at all. Yeah. But there's 20 some scenes, and then with the transitions, these transition scenes, there's like 31 scenes in our play, which is like, almost like a movie or a TV show or something. It's not typical in the theater. Yeah. So it's a lot of things, a lot of data to remember, and you can't futurize. You can't be worried about the scene where you got a note to do something totally different, but it's 3 scenes away, and you're not going to be off stage before then. But don't worry about it now. Focus on the scene you're about to do. And it's extremely hard for me, because I'm anxious by nature, and I can't help it. It's like when your lip is split, you keep, you keep aggravating it, right? So it's really hard mentally. Like, you keep wanting to go over it and over it, and be like, wait, what was that? Or I haven't been saying that line right, and they gave me a note on it. What is it? And then you don't want to be that. You want to be in the present moment, and be like, it's free fall. Well, I'll worry about that when I get there. I hope it is okay. And really, nothing that bad happens if you forget to say it, or you have, you get tongue-tied. You get tongue-tied, that happens in real life. And it's that kind of play. It's a natural play. So the dialogue's sort of written like the characters get tongue-tied sometimes. Right. There's a lot of errors, self-interruptions and stutterings, and they're actually written very painstakingly that way. So if you have an accidental one, no one can tell, to be honest.
Right.
But it takes a while to trust that.
Yeah.
It's not like doing Shakespeare or Moliere or something where it's in verse and you must have a certain meter and a certain number of syllables.
Right. Do you think you have a natural ability? Because this is part of the reason why people can be like, oh yeah, that woman, but they don't know your name because you inhabit these roles.
Oh, thank you.
When did you first find out that you wanted to do this, and was it that you had this thing that you needed to feed, or did you develop it?
I do like to feel I feel safer if I'm submerged in a part. Sometimes I feel like I don't have the chromosome to be a star, partly because I'm happy disappearing into a role. If that makes any sense, it makes me a little I'm shy otherwise. I'm shy for people to photograph me or watch me unless I'm completely enveloped in something. I'm a little self-conscious otherwise. You know what I mean? I think I loved stories in theater when I was little, and then there came a point where I just wanted to be in the story. So that's what it feels like to me. It's like fun, like playing, like children's play. And I think a lot of actors feel that way. I don't think I'm alone in that at all. But I think also I always, when I'm stuck on something, I wish I could say I have like a whole playbook or a method or something, and I guess I do. It's probably a hodgepodge of things. But I always go from this thing that's very common, but actors think of it all in different ways. But if it were you, if you were in this situation, if this were you, because some roles are closer to who you are already than others. I have certain things in common with the character in the play, but a lot of circumstances of that family are unique to itself. They're all kind of outrageous characters in a way. And you're like, okay, so if you had these circumstances, and if you have that ability to think vicariously, then that's really what it is. Like, you just sort of start putting yourself in that character's shoes, and that's why I think that the best face of what we do, like whether it's theater, film, or television, the best version of it is quite humanitarian, because I think the audience gets drawn into feeling and thinking and considering another person who's very far from who they are, what their point of view is. Like, okay, what would it be like to walk in that person's shoes? You might first start out the play or the movie judging them or laughing at them or whatever, and then at some point you'd be like, well, I guess I can't really judge that or I see how he got that way, or how damaged this person is, or ignorant, or whatever, or sheltered, or and so I think being able to think, what would I do? Which is, there's a million versions of that, down to Stanislavski, what if, The other thing is just, what would really happen? This is what my husband always says, this is one of his credos. What would really happen is often more interesting than some outrageous thing you could make up. Yeah. Because it's I find, in my experience, it's more arresting to a reader or an audience. Because it's like, oh, exactly, I have felt that before. I know exactly what that character is feeling right then. And that's what I find interesting about what I do. It's fun to see artists who work from a different angle, who are doing fantastical, bold, theatrical things. It's just not quite my métier or whatever. But I think what would really happen is often the most mesmerizing, and it draws you in because you recognize it. You can relate to it, and then the more real it is, even if the style of the piece is quite theatrical, the more genuine the feelings are, the more people get entrapped by the story. They start empathizing with the character or understanding it, and then, they go from thinking, oh my God, thank God my family's nothing like this, and to being like, oh, my family's a bit like this after all, or I have felt that before, or yes, I know how that feels, And to me, that's the whole draw to both go see a play or a movie, or to be in it, or to write it, I would imagine. I have a very little experience writing, but I live with a writer, and, to me, that's the whole lure, is the feeling empathy and hopefully eliciting empathy for the character you're playing or the situation in the story. And, it can be really challenging. You're playing an unlikable character. It's not your job to judge it. It's sort of like being a lawyer or something. Your job is to represent that character and not judge it. And sometimes that can be really hard. And it's hard to resist commenting on the character. I'm, nothing like this in real life, so I'm going to really overstate this, or something like that. But it's more interesting in the end if you can just go like, okay, but so what circumstances does this woman live in that she behaves this way? And let's try not judging it. Just practice a little non-judgment and try to inhabit it. And, it's an impossible task to totally do that. That's some kind of, I don't know, it sounds like a Buddhist goal to say it aloud like that. But that's what's compelling for me about it.
You are married to a very good writer, director. He maybe wrote a great part for you in Margaret. But are you sitting there thinking, come on, man, where's my woman under the influence?
Yeah, well, I feel like I did have that in Margaret. I mean, I did have a great part in Margaret. But I think he would love to, I honestly do believe he would love to write me big monster parts all the time. But he doesn't actually write for his friends. He tends to use them over and over again because he might, like in a lot of his pieces will have a Ruffalo-ish character that's like a lovable fuck up, it means well, but keeps stepping in it, like Michael Cera's part in Lobby Hero, or This Is Our Youth, the protagonist, they're often these, or Terry and You Can Count on Me. And even Lisa in Margaret, Anna Paquin's character, is, imperfect and screws up, that's sort of, so I think he's just trying to come up with those believable characters and stories, and then he has a stable of actors that he likes to work with, and he tries to use them, but he's not someone who writes vehicles for people. I think he would like to be, and he originally wanted me to be in Manchester somehow if it worked out with the casting, but I was filming Rectify exactly when they were shooting that, but.
How about a sequel to Manchester where you're playing a Michelle Williams character?
That's a good idea.
Come on.
Are you listening, Kenneth Lonergan? Calling Lonergan? No, I think I was, we're always trying to find ways to work together, but we're also raising a daughter together. So we have to kind of, if we're both working on the same project, that gets really tricky because then, she's a teenager now, but and before long she'll be off on her own, and we won't have that delightful problem. And so we're, this is hard, even being in this play, I've missed, she performed in a school, like a one-act or scene night at school, and she did a piece of This Is Our Youth, and I didn't get to see it. Her band she's in a rock band, and she's performing twice while I'm in this play, this little short run of this play, and I'm missing two performances of that. Or she's in the chorus at school, they performed last night at NYU, I missed that. It's really hard, it's a big deal. So, and Kenny's gotten to go see all these things. But I do think, you'd have to ask him, but I don't think, he often gets a performer asking him to, write something for them, and he's like, I would if I could. My brain doesn't quite work that way. I try to find a story or a character, and then hopefully cast some actor I admire in it, not the other way around.
Is there anything you do when you're not working to feed the actor in you?
Yes. First of all, read. Not necessarily dramatic literature, just reading.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, every time I get on the subway, I mark people, I study them. It's fascinating because the New York City subway is, or any big city's subway system is an incredible opportunity for character study, because there's a sort of a unspoken rule that somehow once, it's not really true on the platform, but once you're on everyone kind of thinks they're invisible. Yeah. They're reading, or they're looking at their phone, or they're dozing off, or they're talking to themselves, or all kinds of interesting behavior. Some people look really tired, some people look heartbroken, some people are chattering and giggling or eating ravenously. It's fascinating. And they're right next to each other, but they're pretending they're in their own cubicle. It's like if they were in a lobby, they would not, somehow there'd be a different social construct. And it's a little, for instance, on the platform, people are a little bit like, don't make eye contact. They're kind of like, aware of each other. And then once they're seated, it's sort of like, I don't know, that's how I perceive it anyway. So there's always opportunities to study human behavior, because I think the one great way an actor can prepare for every future role is to be struck by people, either in literature or in real life, that you come across, people you know, or people, sometimes it's easier with strangers, people you don't know because you don't have any investment in how they think or feel. You're just observing them and trying to kind of guess who they are, and do they have a boyfriend, and are their parents living, and do they like their job, do they have a job, are they ambitious, are they kinky in some way, like what and just sort of, because it adds into a sort of big huge data bank, so that sometimes you'll get some part that's maybe a little underwritten that you're auditioning for, or you get cast in, and you're like, somehow out of the reserves, you can't remember the day, but there was a kind of person who had a nervous tic, or had a habit, or was talked too fast, or interrupted, or talked very slowly, or breathe through their mouth, or just some idiosyncratic thing. And so I just think that's my advice to actors, is to really observe. Acting is observing is some adage that I didn't make up. It's well known. That's true. And then if certain kinds of characters are interesting to you, nurse those daydreams, because someday you're going to get an opportunity to apply them. I also love to watch the old movies, the movies from the 30s and 40s. People often say they're dated or mannered, and I don't think that. I think every era in the fullness of time has its own affectations, and I sort of referenced that earlier. Different ways people behave in life and in on film that behaviorally, decades later seems stilted. But if you look beyond that, there's some great filmmaking from those eras, not just the 70s, which you and I both like, but I watched Casablanca again the other night. I've seen it a million times, and that's also a great thing for actors to do, because it's removed. You don't have to feel like, these are the actors of my generation, and I know everyone's opinion of X, Y, or Z, and but these are people from before your time, and you're free to worship them or not be turned on. You don't have to have any baggage about it. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Like, you can just be like, wow, Humphrey Bogart, what a curious, interesting, or good God. And the way that those films are lit and shot they make today's movies look like I'm sorry, it's just a lost art, and it's a real mistake to discount those movies, not just for the way they look, but I think the acting is sometimes just incredible, and you have to sometimes put it in a context of like, I'm studying a piece from the past, so I'm watching something. I'm not going to judge it by behavioral standards now, because I guarantee in 40 years what goes for great real acting now is going to look dated in some way that's out of our control, because things shift, accents shift, behavior, what's considered natural, normal behavior. It's absurd to say, oh, they were so phony in those films. It's like, come on, be a little more broad-minded. And yes, some actors, while still being compelling, might be hammier than others, but they have other things going for them, you know. But there's some that's incredible wealth of material to learn from.
Oh yeah, I'm with you on that. Is there anything that you do well that people don't know you do well, that you're not able to do enough of?
I don't know. You know, it's funny, when earlier part of my career, I got cast almost exclusively in comedy, sometimes farce even, like really broad comedy, and I had a lot of successes in, like, you know, and then somehow it shifted. It's like I was like, no one takes me seriously as a dramatic actress, and so I kind of deliberately tried to, you know, put myself forward for those parts, and gradually, and now it seems like all I get is sad material. In the play, actually, that you saw, I get to kind of do both, you know, which is my dream of dreams, because that's always the best material anyway, is tragic comedy, I think, like, whatever that means to you, because they're all the same. I mean, real life people are funny and sad at the same time. But I guess that's not really an answer to your question, except that I'd love to. I've had a run of playing sort of some dark characters, and I would love to play some frothy, light, you know, Noel Coward or something, you know, or Oscar Wilde or something. But I have done that in my past, and there was a time when that was the only kind of thing I got cast in, but I would love to just change it up more. But I've also, sometimes you just get offered a part and it's juicy, and whether you're in the mood to be in another drama or not, you can't pass it by because it's really good, you know. So you take what you get offered.
J. Smith Cameron, thank you so much for this.
You're very welcome.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of IFP, the Independent Filmmaker Project.